Hey guys, welcome to another walkthrough for Star Wars: The Old Republic. The long-awaited walkthrough for Explosive Conflict. I've finally finished it. Alright, first off, we have Zorn and Toth, the first two bosses for Explosive Conflict. When you come up to the bosses, you'll see that they're two Drauks. This is a complicated fight. First off, what you want to do is you want to split your ops group into two groups with a tank, DPS, and healers. For Zorn, you're going to want to have your ranged DPS on him, because when the Toth Drauk jumps to Zorn, Zorn will put out an debuff that goes out to 28 meters. This debuff is called Fearful. What this does is all the damage you deal to Zorn is reflected back to you. This can make it incredibly hard for your healers to heal through. So as a DPS, you want to go up to maximum range and DPS from there. As a sniper, it's easier for me because all my attacks are 35 meters. On the Toth side, you have to put your melee DPS, or any extra range you have. You see Toth does a AoE stomp. Your melee can eat these attacks, except for when he enrages and turns a yellowish color. At that point, you have to move out of the way so you don't eat it. Also, throughout the fight, Toth will start punching the ground. At this point, red circles will spawn all over the raid. You must move out of these circles. You're going to want to move out further than just the end part mark of the AoE. The damage radius is a little bit larger than the AoE tells. Also, while Toth is doing this, Zorn will put out a AoE attack. It's a conal. The tank has to try face him away as long as possible, unless he gets a red circle. In that case, you might have to move him towards the raid for a split second. It is a yell, which I said before is a conal.
Alex, get back to 29 meters, your maximum range, otherwise you're going to take Fearful. You do not want Fearful.
For my group, because we are so geared, we employ the strategy where we hold the bosses during this fight. Normally, for a group that's coming into this fight geared for what the op is meant to be, the tanks have to switch, because since the tank is, has to be up close, he takes Fearful. At that point, the tanks have to switch. The Zorn tank taunts Toth, and the Toth tank taunts Zorn as Toth jumps to Zorn. This way, the tanks can move as the Drauks do. This strategy is most commonly used with pug groups, seeing as how most pug groups don't really start unless you have high-geared people, which is very sad. But other than that, this fight is heal intensive. The DPS have to keep the two bosses at the same health, just like Jargon Sorno and Karagas Palace. If you kill one before the other will enrage, and these bosses are very, very tough, and the enrage, once one is killed, the other will most likely wipe your group if they're not killed within a couple seconds of each other. As you can see here, we killed Zorn first instead of Toth. He let out a huge AoE, which almost killed most of our group. After you kill the two bosses, another boss will spawn. He is a final phase boss. He is very easy to kill, as long as you have the heals and the DPS for it. His abilities must be interrupted. If you do not interrupt his abilities, he will kill somebody. The Sweeping Blaster attack does a lot more damage than you might think, and then he has a Death from Above attack, which, just like the Bounty Hunters, does a lot of damage. Next up is Firebrand and Stormcrawler. It is a dual boss fight, just like Zorn and Toth. You have to do the same thing you did on Zorn and Toth to fight them. On the Firebrand side, one healer must stand on the ground or a ranged DPS in order to take an ability that Stormcrawler put out. As you can see here, I'm doing a dual view mode. For the first time, my best friend Gabe is helping me out on this. You'll see him a lot more in upcoming videos. But as you can see here, I am on Firebrand, the left tank when you enter the arena, and Gabe is on Stormcaller, the right tank when you enter the arena. I'm doing 2 views on this because I can't accurately portray the fight with just 1 view. As you can see on my screen, Alex's view, there is a yellow light going over my healer. What the healer must do is when the light is no longer tracing them, they have to move out of the way, because then Stormcrawler is going to shoot out a lightning bubble at them. Also, throughout the fight, you will get the tanks will call out defensive systems, at which point they will knock you off the tanks, and you must get into these shields because Firebrand will shoot up rockets into the air and it'll hit everybody in the raid unless you are under the bubbles. They look like bubble shields from Halo 3. They are very easy to spot. Inside the bubbles, on the Firebrand side, there will be 3 ads, and on the Stormcrawler side, there will be 2 ads. There are 2 ads on the Stormcrawler side because the Stormcrawler tank has to kite lightning bubbles that come off from the tank. I have found that walking backwards while kiting the bubbles will line them up perfectly, and you will not take a single tick from the bubble, although you will get hit from the missile that Firebrand shoots off. You must go over to the bubble that your healer is under for a quick pit stop heal, so to speak. After that, after approximately 8 to 9 bubbles, the tanks will go back into normal mechanic, at which point you have to get back on the tank and finish DPSing, or continue DPSing. Also, on the Firebrand side, he will channel an attack called Incinerate Armor on whoever is tanking him. This attack increases the damage dealt by Firebrand, and at which point, if your tanks or your group are not prepared to deal with this debuff, your tanks will have to switch targets. For my group, because we are geared, we hold the bosses where they are, the tanks stay where they are, and the healers heal through the debuff. On the Stormcrawler side, there is a debuff that he channels called Double Destruction. If the tank takes this attack, he will take increased damage from Stormcrawler. As I said before, usually when the Double Destruction is cast, Incinerate Armor will cast after that and the tanks will have to swap. What the tank on Stormcrawler will have to do is walk behind the 2 DPS that are DPSing Stormcrawler. At this point, Stormcrawler's Double Destruction beams will hit 1 or 2 of the DPS, usually 1 beam on each. You do this because the tank will not take the damage, and the DPS will be out of the conal if the tank is tanking the correct way, in which the turret is away from the DPS. The turrets do conal abilities, so you'll have to make sure the DPS are out of the conal. You also, as you saw throughout, you've been seeing throughout the fight, you have to stand on top of the tank's lower part in order to DPS it effectively. If you stand on the lower part, off the ground, or on the ground, I'm sorry, Stormcrawler will shoot lightning bubbles at you, which will wipe the raid.
No, you're right.
The
shield news.
Yeah, you can't trust the
Well, as a
potion to knock you off.
sniper, since I don't have a gap closer, I have learned to use the tank knockback.
As you saw in the Zorn and Toth fight, you have to kill the 2 bosses at relatively the same time, or else the other will enrage, doing massive amounts of damage to your group. You want to keep Firebrand and Stormcrawler roughly at the same percentage. If one is dying faster than the other, have one of your DPS switch, preferably ranged, so you don't have to switch tanks. Also, you want to do this because you want to keep both your DPS on the same side so that they can kill the ads under the bubbles. If the ads are still up when the bubble phase is over, the ads will cause a lot of damage towards your raid because you'll be taking damage from the bosses as well as the ads. If you do end up killing one of the bosses before the other, you want to make sure to kill Firebrand first, because he does the raid-wide AoE that he does when you're under the bubbles, except the damage is increased almost practically tenfold, which will wipe your group, if not instantly, then in a couple hits, 1 or 2 mostly. When Stormcrawler enrages, if you've killed Firebrand first, he will simply channel a superpowered Double Destruction. In my experience, Stormcrawler has had a tough time making up his mind which one he channels it at, except when he does land it on somebody, that person dies instantly. So just try to keep the bosses at an even health, and you won't have to worry about it.
Back on the tanks.
Oh crap, bubble on the tank.
12.
Yeah. You guys are gonna have to move.
7.
Shit.
As you can see on my screen, a lightning bubble got dropped onto the Firebrand tank. This cannot happen. This is a consequence of the Stormcrawler tank jumping back up onto the base early. If the tank does this, the Stormcrawler will launch a bubble at whoever is drawing the most aggro in the raid.
One of them wasn't a spike.
As you can see here, we killed Stormcrawler early, at which point Firebrand went into his bubble phase, and after the bubble phase he went into his enrage.
It doesn't do any damage while he's in the phase.
We were extremely lucky to have killed the bosses, because if Firebrand had any higher health, we would have completely wiped instead of just losing 2 people. Other than that, this is pretty much the fight. You just have to maintain constant communication with your group. Your tanks have to pay attention as to where everything is, and if needed, you must perform a boss swap during Incinerate Armor. You want to do that when it's channeling, not when it's cast, because otherwise you'll take a conal from Firebrand.
Definitely.
Thank you for watching.
Good job, guys.
If you would like me to do this fight or any of the fights from a tanking perspective, please let me know.